All right, welcome. Today we're doing Arcanum 5 and 6, but we'll open with just an open space for you guys. And please share anything that you want to bring back for discussion or anything to do with the cards, or maybe you've gotten some numbers, you started noticing messages.
Hello.
Hello.
I guess I could share something that I think is kind of interesting. It happened on Thursday, and I just wanted to share it so I can get your guys' opinions or just thoughts. Um, it was a very interesting day. It was one of those, I think, like when we were talking in the previous meeting, where you're just hit with a lot of situations that you feel like, okay, this it's not a coincidence, you're being tested. And there was situations where I was triggered by something and I automatically knew, okay, I'm angry about this. And like my mind went off and it said, okay, I'm angry because of this and this and this, these are the reasons. But I didn't feel angry. Like my feelings were not there. Like my body was just like, it was all mental. And I noticed that. And I thought that was interesting. And then later on, I had another situation where I wasn't even thinking about it, but a feeling arose. And suddenly I started feeling like sadness, but it started like in my body and it was a feeling. But my mind had no opinion. And so I thought it was interesting how there was that disconnection where I knew there was a disconnection because it wasn't a reaction of both. It was an individual reaction. And I it was very distinctive. And I still haven't stopped thinking about it. And I'm still thinking about it. And the day that all that happened, I brought it to contemplation. And the only answer I could get, or I could feel that it was right, it was I'm learning how to live in a detached way. And that's the only thing I can really I even tried thinking over and over and I'm like, no, that's not what it is. I'm just learning to detach. And so I just thought that was a very interesting observation that I had in myself and just wanted to share and see what you guys thought.
What I'm hearing is actually that you're improving in your observation skills, right? So I don't know if you remember back lesson 6 in the first chamber, we talked about how the body is a machine and we have different centers, right? So, and this actually goes back to also what we were talking about with the Kabbalah as well, and that this is a good thing because when we start to observe ourselves better, we can start to notice the subtle differences between where the egos are and which centers. So I would say that's progress, right? In that sense, because what you're describing is for example, you felt the ego in the mental plane, in the mind, in the intellectual center, and then later on you felt the ego in the emotional plane or in the astral, right? In the astral body, in the heart center. So that's the emotional brain, right? Which is our heart. Um, that's actually very important because of the fact that when we're moving to comprehend and understand things about ourselves, one of the first things we need to know is where it is, right? If we're really going to dissolve an ego, for example, just I don't know, an ego of anger, right? We have like a million egos of anger. We can't just be like, oh, that was anger, and then I comprehend it's going to go away, right? How do we really comprehend that ego of anger? Well, if it was a thought, it's like, well, that's first and foremost. It's a mental aggregate in my mind that's angry about something. Now I can analyze it better because it's a specific thought pattern related to something. Or if it's sadness that comes up in my heart and it's an emotion, I have this sad emotion that comes up when this situation happens. And that's the next step into starting to isolate and detach these aggregates and put in the space, and then eventually the Divine Mother dissolve them. So that's how I hear it. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I would say that's accurate. We start by noticing thoughts and emotions, and that's an expansion of the awareness, because before that we were the thoughts and the emotions, and now when the consciousness moves up a level, we're the ones seeing them. And so if you can see them, that's what we're talking about by seeing the egos. A lot of people, when they start out with self observation, they say, oh, I was angry, and so they're noticing anger, but they're not noticing it as an observer yet. They're just noticing it as an experience that they're fully identified with, and they see it as them. But to be able to notice that it's arising in different centers is to reach a certain level of ability to observe, at least with those aggregates, because we have so many different ways that we're identified that it can start in some areas. And sometimes when we start to have the trials, especially the trials of the elements, as we talked about, either for some people, it happens when they go through the initiation into second chamber, that's when it starts. For others, especially in this case, because we have a long time before we're actually going ahead with these consecrations, it's highly likely that most of you will be going through the trials before that initiation ceremony. So when we start to have those tests of the elements, the tests can be very specific, like water for emotions and fire for anger. So it can be isolated in the kind of element that we're being tested on, so we can see how we are with that element, how is our mastery of that element, and to see it in the centers. Because when we want to comprehend the egos, it starts by like a study of the enemy, like know the enemy, know where they hang out, know how they, what are their strategies. So we have to understand the circumstances in which they arise. It might be different people that come in and are the catalyst or the trigger for this energy to come in, but we might notice that it's always a certain structure that causes it, like, or there's certain stories that are attached to it that help us to understand, okay, these are the triggers, so that we can take it into meditation, into contemplation. And what we can often find is that there could be, say, for example, if we're having a mental aspect to it, there could also be emotions that are connected to it, but we don't see them yet. That could be, I'm not saying in every case, but sometimes you might be having like very critical or negative thoughts about someone, and you just, at first you're in it, and then you start to notice, wait a minute, I'm thinking negatively all the time about this person. So then you start to create space, you start to see those negative thoughts. And then by and by, as you take it into meditation and you come to a place where you surrender all of the attachment, all of the story, all of the illusion that creates separation, that they're a bad guy and I'm a good guy. And in that moment of surrender, suddenly a big wave of emotion can come out. And that was all the suppressed emotion that we didn't see the whole time, that we were unwilling to see. So it was being experienced as in the mind only, because we were not prepared to experience that part. So that can happen as well.
I mean, basically we're talking about the third state of consciousness, right? And in a sense, the third state of consciousness works similar to, like, I don't know, how we said, like, you can have samadhi at different degrees, right? When we first start to connect to it, we can expand it, right? Because the fourth state of consciousness is samadhi. So like, if you're not attaching to the unity, it's a present awareness. It's an inner outer awareness. And I know some people like to say it's like when we're in our heart. And I mean, sure, yeah, maybe like that's pretty vague. I don't know if that helps people understand what it is, but like in a sense, when we initially connect to the third state of consciousness, it is through not the lower emotional center, but our connection to the astral through the heart. So to intuition would be like the first example of connecting that. But I think when we just say like, just put your awareness in the heart and you're in the third state of consciousness, it could be a little bit confusing.
Or misleading. Like
Misleading,
people
yeah.
can think if they focus on their heart, then they are in the third state of consciousness, but maybe not yet. Maybe they will be with practice, because basically the awareness is not isolated to the body. It's piercing into the other dimensions. So you can see or sense, shall we say, it's like a see means the awareness sees, it's not with the eyes. You can see the emotions and the thoughts. And as a first step, we could say very basically.
But I like the explanation we give, I think back in the second lesson to the first chamber, but it's that inner outer awareness, right? And it's in the present moment, right? It's always in the present moment. It's when we like free ourselves from our preoccupations with the past and the future. And we're just in the moment and observing ourselves. And we know what's going on around us. We know what's going on in us. We practice the key of soul to start to connect to that state. And yeah, I mean, it starts about us, hearing the egos chattering and realizing it's not us. And then more subtly, we can tell the difference between, here's a thought, here's an emotion, here's an impulse. And then it grows from there too, to where we can even feel detached from the vehicle for moments of time, where we almost feel like our perception is coming from the higher planes. But all of those things, it's a good thing to be able to start to subtly notice the difference between all these things. And that's part of actually what we were trying to get at with the practices from the Kabbalah series, is lesser the intellectual things, but starting to understand the subtle differences between the dimensions in a practical sense, so that we can feel the difference between the ego being and the emotions of the mind. So I'm glad to hear that you had that experience, because that's what we're looking to start cultivating. And yeah.
Yeah, and you might hear some people say, oh, if you have that awareness, it means you're too intellectual, or some kinds of weird descriptions about it. It is definitely, it's a knowing that just gets bigger and bigger, and it's real. It's not made up. It's not like if I'm scrunching or squinting my brow and I'm concentrated. No, it's an awareness field, and it's bigger than the physical body, and it keeps growing, and it can grow exponentially. And that's what we really are. We're not the body that is arising within the field.
And it certainly shouldn't be intellectual, right? Because if we're in the present moment, we shouldn't be in our mind. If we're thinking that we're in the third state of consciousness, we're probably not.
Yeah, if you're saying, oh yes, now I'm in the third state of consciousness,
I'm focusing really hard. Yeah, I don't
know. but yes, if you feel like less like the body and more like a presence, then that's the start of it. And or if you feel like an awareness surrounding the body, or an awareness that's shining out from the heart, that is not a person, it's a seeing, a knowing.
And it certainly can expand both with how intricate we can get with observing our internal state, and then also with certain layers too, right? Because if it starts with us connecting with the intuition and inspiration in the heart center, as we work the centers and eventually, well, hopefully can connect through the crown, then we can access things like the cosmic mind or the Akashic records. And then that's that like all knowing, and these downloads. I mean, that usually more happens in meditation, but we could connect partially through that, usually, well, in a vigil state. And that would be third state of consciousness. Like you wouldn't be like having a full-blown download and getting all this information, but you kind of can feel the energy just like coming down from the top. And then when you say you're speaking, maybe you're more inspired to speak, and you have that connection to like the cosmic mind. I don't know the best way to say it. And that also comes from just building that up, because as we work on the centers and we work on the constant practice of self-remembering, we'll eventually go from just the higher emotional center to also the higher intellectual center. So
That's a good report, Jasmine, even though maybe it was uncomfortable.
Yeah, I appreciate your input. Yeah, I was definitely trying to understand it, and the only information or um idea that I thought it could be was just, okay, I'm getting better at detaching, or that's as far as I got, but I think I have a better idea now, so thank you.
You're
well,
welcome.
definitely not wrong, because that's
Mm.
part of detaching, right? It's self-remembering with another person.
Mm.
But I would say, yeah, definitely the the improved observation technique is always important, and we should always strive to observe ourselves even better and better in our internal state, because it will help us understand ourselves better and then do the work better.
Yeah, some people don't even know that they're angry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those people that like in those comedies where they say, I am calm, you know, I think that's Adam Sandler
Well,
or
also,
something.
how many people, if let's say they're in gnosis, but they're completely identified. Well, after the fact, after getting mad at somebody, they're like, well, that was anger. Okay, sure, but you didn't actually observe that. You let it come out, you let it manifest, and then after the fact, that anger. I mean, a regular person can do that. When your parents get mad at you and then like apologize 2 hours later, they knew it was anger. I don't think they were self-observation. So yeah.
Mm. Anything else from the group? Hi, Jenin. We're just sharing reflections and learnings from the week. Oh, if no one has anything else, then we can go to the practice. I just know that Sarah was like gonna press the mic, so I'm not sure if we cut you off.
Way to put people on the spot.
Okay, no? All right, that's all good. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn off our cameras. Okay, finding a comfortable position. If you have a candle, if you are in the habit of lighting a candle, you can do that. Now beginning to relax the body and taking some deep breaths. Scanning through the body and noticing any areas of tension. Noticing if there's a tightness in the shoulders, in the neck, in the jaw. Now bringing the awareness to the breath, breathing in and out of the nostrils, and keeping the awareness on the breath. Now, with the awareness on the heart, we say internally, may all beings be happy. May all beings be blissful. May all beings find peace. Not just saying the words, but holding a compassionate intent for all beings. May all beings be happy. May all beings be blissful. May all beings find peace. May all beings be happy. May all beings be blissful. May all beings find peace. And now the mantra Aum 3 times. Ah. 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 Turning our attention towards the Divine Mother, that inner nurturing and creative quality within ourselves, that powerful force of creation in its positive aspect, and holding our awareness in the heart, feeling that inner connection. Maybe there's a warmth in the chest or tingles, feeling the being, dropping all thoughts and distractions, just being present in this moment. Now we say a prayer internally to the Divine Mother. O Isis, Mother of the Cosmos, root of love, trunk, bud, leaf, flower, and seed of all that exists. We conjure thee, naturalizing force. We call upon the Queen of Space and of the night, and kissing her loving eyes, drinking the dew from her lips, breathing the sweet aroma of her body, we exclaim, O thou Newt, eternal Satiety of heaven, who art the primordial soul, who art what was and what shall be, whose veil no mortal has lifted. When thou art beneath the irradiating stars of the nocturnal and profound sky of the desert, with purity of heart, and in the flame of the serpent, we call upon thee. Keeping our awareness on the Divine Mother, on the heart, We take some moments to connect. And sensing this part of ourselves within the mantra I A O 3 times. I A O I A O I A O. Now sensing this presence that has arrived internally, we will individually take time to go deep and connect. bringing our awareness back to the heart center, staying deep and connected with our attention towards the Divine Mother, towards the being, praying internally, "Oh, my being, please sublimate all these energies and the energies that I have worked to free up. Please convert them into the values of the soul. Please build and strengthen my intuition so that I can understand the messages that are being sent to me to support and guide me on my path. Help me to receive that understanding in a way that transcends the mind and its confusions. Let me enter the realm of the consciousness, the ability to understand symbols and numbers. Please continue to activate my heart chakra, restore and regenerate the senses that are my natural ability, allowing them to develop in the heart. And now the mantra O 7 times. O. 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 And slowly returning from the practice, gradually coming back to the body, the space where we sit. And when we are ready, coming back from the practice. Okay, can everyone see the screen? Yes. All right. So we're now coming to tarot number 5, the hierarch, and we'll run through the symbols, but we have a quote here first from Tarot and Kabbalah. And 5 is obviously about karma. And this is a quote that highlights how we reject our karma and we don't understand that we are the causative agent in the circumstances that surround us. So Samuel Alambior says, we protest against the insulters when we were always insulting those that surrounded us. We want our children to obey us when we never knew how to obey our parents. Slander bothers us terribly while we were always slandering others, and the world was filled with pain because of it. Gossiping disgusts us. We do not want anyone to murmur against us. Meanwhile, we always have been engaged in gossiping and rumors, speaking evil of our neighbors and mortifying the life of others. In other words, we always demand what we have never given. We have always been saved in other lives, and we deserve the worst, but we suppose that the best should be granted to us. The situations that we find ourselves in were created by us, either in this life, or we could say in a past life. And that's what this symbol is of here. We see the hierarch or Anubis here, and he's holding in his hand the staff of power. The staff is a representation, like we see in the cards. We'll see the sword, we'll see the staff, and it has to do with something projecting. We could also say it's a reference to the phallic or the positive symbol, something going out. And the jackal here, or Anubis, is in what we would call a position of officiation. And that means he's involved in like a sacred duty of the divine, some kind of expression that we see in symbolism. Just like the ancient mystery schools would have a kind of officiation where they might do some kind of rituals and work with certain energies to harness those energies. We could also say that's officiation. So it's standing in a position to mete out a certain kind of energy. And that's why he wears the mask of a jackal, because he's issuing out justice to the beings, which is really just a big symbolic way of saying cause and effect. And we can see that below his feet is the scales showing balance. And this is the fine balance that has on either side both mercy and mercilessness, or we could say, what is it, justice and
mercy and severity,
and severity.
Mercy and justice.
Yeah. Or Jachin and Boaz, black and white, positive and negative. And the scale is below because it said that the scale is in the waters of life. And this is a reference to the use of energy. So we are like a mini God. We're a little in a position of being able to create on a certain level, in our level. And to create is how we use energy, what it is that we create, and then our responsibility for that creation. So we talk about conserving energy or using it for the being, using it for the values of the being, positive values. But if we are engaged in all these things that Samuel Alambior discusses here, like slander, gossip, and insults, and vanity, and what have you, then our energy is contributing to those values. And it's like, it's just cause and effect. What you put in is what you get out. And because we are asleep, because we're not aware, we don't know what we're taking out. On the scales, there features the heart and the feather, and that's a reference to the balance between the thoughts and the emotions. The thoughts are, the feather is like a reference to air. So the scale is calling us to balance the heart and the head, to bring everything into balance, really. And that's how we work with number 5. It's how we work with karma, because all the cards indicate a certain point on the path. And number 5 is a point of definition. It's a point where we go up, or we go down, it's the flaming star of the pentagram. We know the pentagram is a symbol of the 5 elements. And there's, say, the symbol that you might see done esoterically, where you have 3 fingers pointing up. And the 3 fingers pointing up means the pentagram is in its positive position. Whereas when it's reversed, it's the devil horns, and it's the energy going downwards into the abyss. So at the point where we finally have to face ourselves, face our karma, that's where we decide, are we going to do the work, or are we going to fail and go downwards? Before that, before coming onto the path, we can be in like a place of ignorance, in a state of sleep, but ignorant sleep, where we're not really being called to take the next step. But as we start to wake up, as we start to work with transmutation and work with these energies, then we really can go up or down, because we're beginning to activate a lot of powerful forces. And so that's why this number 5 calls us to define ourselves. So those are the symbols.
Yeah, so I think with the hierarchy, really, practically this card, this is one of the first cards that we're going to stop dealing with like abstract ideas, both practically and spiritually. This card represents the law. Arcanum 5 is related to Kabbalah, which is the sphere of justice. Kabbalah means justice. And it's related also to our individual consciousness, the divine soul. In a sense, right, our individual consciousness is it's our internal regulator. It's our internal thing that balances between, what's right and wrong, when we should have mercy, when we should have justice. It's that little voice that's inside of our head. And when we look at the plate on the card, right, the scale is in the bottom third of the card, which is, related to the more physical dimensions. And in a practical sense, this is not a negative card, like a no per se, like 8, which also deals with karma. 8 injustice, which we'll talk about that as well, usually deals with karma that needs to be paid. In the sense of, this is usually, we would say, when you get this card and you're asking a question, it just has something to do with the law, something to do with balance. So based on the context of our question, if getting the law is good or bad, right? Based on the context of your question. So the context would matter a little bit. That's also where we might look at the minor arcanum and see if those are more positive or negative. But it's a pretty neutral answer on that. Just something to do with the law, which can be big. It's actually this was the first card I ever had when I threw the tower, just randomly. And there's a practice you could do with this card, and you can meditate on Anubis, and he can appear to you, and you could actually, well, one, you could try to negotiate your karma, which I don't suggest unless you have a real good reason for it. But you could also ask to see your karmic book, which I actually did a while back, and I couldn't read it. It was in angel language, but it was kind of cool. But that brings me back around to the middle part of this plate, right? So we have the master Anubis, who's the judge, the law judge. And I'll get to the numerology on number 5 in a second, but Master Samael talks a lot about Tetragrammaton and the pentagram here, and Master Lakshmi, like he did with the previous arcanum, relates it also to its commandment, which is thou shalt not kill, which also this quote here from Master Samael has that a little bit as well, where he's talking about gossip. We know that not killing is also related to not killing others, like in mental forms and emotionally and all this stuff. So gossip would go along with that. But in a sense, and like I said, there's a difference. Sometimes we get the symbology of the 5, or we get the actual symbol of the arcanum. I really stress with this symbol, like as at least visually, like if you see Anubis in the astral, it's almost certainly to do with the law to some extent. That doesn't mean it doesn't have to do with not killing. Maybe you're, something to do with the law because you've been gossiping too much, could be, with context. But usually when you see the Lord of karma, it has to do with karma. At least just from my experience. So when we talk about specifically the image of this arcanum, not just the number, which could have very many meanings, usually this relates to the law. And then, like I said, in not necessarily a positive or negative way, a vague way. So the context is very important, right? It could be related it could be related to Dharma too, right? Let's say, you should see Anubis and a whole bunch of gold bars or something in the astral. It might mean that you're owed a lot of Dharma or something for something you did in past life. So it doesn't have to be bad, but it usually when you see this master specifically, it deals with the law. But moving on to the number 5 as well, right? There is the value of, also not killing, which also relates to the law, because that would give us that, and having love for others, not holding in resentment and things of that nature. And then there's also the aspect of this, like Ruth said, the pentagram, and the pentagram is da'ath, right? But it's also represented with the 5 points. And just how the pentagram could be like this, I don't know what it would look like, how you're trying to make it go down.
I think the devil symbol is this.
Oh yeah, like this.
Right.
Whatever.
So that's the 2 up, and that's 3 up. So it's
not really 3 down though. I don't think it's like a gun is like. Anyway,
it
doesn't matter. I don't know if they have an esoteric symbol for the left-handed path. But
we're not in that path.
Yeah, but the point being is that that points back to what we talked about with da'ath being a doorway that leads 2 ways. That knowledge, the esoteric knowledge, depending on how we use it, can make us descend or ascend on the level of being. And 5 is intrinsically a link to that. The name of the secret name of God, or in a sense, it's the energy that makes existence happen here in every single moment. If you guys remember, I don't know how familiar you guys are with conjurations, but conjuration of 4, at the end of it, they talk about the most sacred tetragrammaton, which is the center point of the burning cross of light. That's literally the point of da'ath in the present moment, where spirit is bound to matter through the energy of that. And that's God, that's the tetragrammaton, it's life itself. So in that sense, 5 is important. Outside of that, though, I mean, the Hebrew letter is Hey. I'm not going to get too much into the Hebrew letters like I have before, but Hey is usually, it's like the feminine yoni, which could be female, or the uterus in that sense of nature. In that aspect, the relation to this being, this card is Geburah, right? In a spiritual sense, on a path of ascension. So we're looking at the arcanum. We're not talking about now man, female here, but just in the sense of the aspect of the path, when we're going upwards, is masculine. Not that you have to be a man to ascend, but it's in the masculine direction, a positive energy polarity. And in that look at the path, that aspect of Geburah would be female. So there's a connection there as well. Planetary wise, I don't know, it has Mercury. I don't know. Mars is the ruler on the Kabbalistic tree. But Mercury and Mars can be intertwined as well. Actually reminds me, we should do a meditation to Master Samael for the period of Scorpio. But I think that's enough said on the card.
Yeah, Jenin was asking about having, I think it was being taken to court by someone.
Mhm.
And if you get that card, then that fits very well, because it's about the law, it's about justice, and the situation is literally a situation of justice. When the court is involved, or say the test of justice, for example, there's no one size fits all approach. So we couldn't say, oh, you should just lie down and take it, or you should respond in court. Every situation is different, and we need to use the consciousness to wisely navigate the situation without becoming identified with it. So if you do go to court with someone, that doesn't mean that, oh, now you're being identified or you're being defensive, because that could be the
I
right
mean, if you're
action.
in that situation and then you throw the tarot and you get the Hierophant, I mean, that's Lila. That's the best way I could put it. The universe kind of like, yeah, thanks. I mean, the answer is the law. So like in that situation, it's like, well, obviously you follow the law, but it's not really, it wouldn't be really giving you necessarily an answer of what you should do. But it would be describing the situation. It'd be fitting, but it would probably be just like a kind of like obvious answer. I mean, if it was 8, if you got justice and you're in a legal situation, it might mean that you have to be patient with it. But yeah, if you get the Hierophant and you're clearly in a karmic situation, that's one of those ones you're just like, thanks, being.
Yeah, and it can be the test of justice, because all of the tests are in a way us facing all of our karma and deciding to address it, to consciously clear it piece by piece. So the test of justice is karmic in a way, it's a test in a way, and it requires the consciousness for us to move through it in an appropriate way.
It could also be an invite to meditate on what is going on, right? So if it's telling you the law, obviously you know something is karmic, but it could be an invitation to dive more deep in meditation into trying to figure out what is going on with the law, what needs to be negotiated so that the situation works out. Because Anubis is who we negotiate with. So perhaps it's something that internally is complex and needs to be solved in a certain way, and you need to connect internally with the judges. But that's just spitballing.
Yeah, more meditation, but it is funny to get
Well, yeah.
to, not that it's funny that you're in a
well, no,
legal
I'm just saying on
battle.
the surface practical level, it's just like yeah, obviously. You know, but that would be something maybe on a deeper internal level. There's something that needs to be investigated internally related to the law, which is why you have the current.
So here we have an interesting piece that's from Alchemy and Kabbalah and the Tarot. And because Samuel Ampère is talking about the pentagram, which is also a symbol of the realized man or woman, then he starts to talk about the path and discuss the elements of the path. So he mentions bodhisattvas, and there's a quote here that we can read that describes a kind of situation. So it says, many times a man or a woman in search of the divine torch of truth arrives at some Gnostic lumicial, and that's the name for the centers in the second chamber, where second chamber members meet to do advanced practices. So someone arrives to a lumicial. Apparently, the newly arrived is now a beginner. However, the brothers and sisters ignore what the soul of that person is. He or she can be a bodhisattva, the human soul of a master that wants to return to his own father who is in secret. Thus, the brothers and sisters become overwhelmed when something superior occurs to the apparent beginner. Then they say, we who are longer in these studies are not passing through what this beginner is now passing through. Thus, they ask themselves, how is it possible that this person who has only just begun is boasting about being an initiate? Judge not, that ye be not judged, for with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged, and with what measure ye meet, it shall be measured to you again. So with number 5, it's all about karma. And it's interesting that karma comes up and judgment, even within, we can say, closer circles, say an esoteric circle. When we first start on the path, our trials come from those around us, say family members and maybe people that are trying to stop us from doing these studies or meditating, or they say we're crazy, or saying maybe a partner that doesn't want us to do the alchemy. These are all challenges that can come from family and from society. And then as we move along, and maybe we are in some closer circles with other esoteric students, and then even the people around us can become a test. But it's all part of how we face our karma. and the things that come to us are related to what we need to be tested on and what we need to face so that we can advance. So I just thought this was it was an interesting story of how the path progresses and the tests move wherever we go.
One thing on that last quote, it's important to not be concerned about other people's work and to just focus on our own. In a sense, everyone is exactly where they need to be, and we are all at a high meta level, each other's future and past lives anyway. So we're all experiencing the same path at the same time, just from all different perspectives. But somebody else's journey will look different than yours. It doesn't make it any better or worse, or it's all now, and we're all one things.
All right.
And everybody's mission is just as important.
Yeah.
Even the person who's asleep and stays the mailman, or even the people who are, black magicians, or the terrible politicians that are blowing up the world. They're all serving a purpose to make the contract go. So, and also some of them suffer a lot as their being is doing that for giving us the opportunity to grow.
I think it's a major sacrifice, like someone who is going to be a demon for someone else to be an angel, like thank you.
And then they have to go to the abyss, but with even more extra pain, because they have to have the bodies destroyed. It's a major sacrifice. The person doesn't necessarily make, but the being does. So.
Oops, sorry, wait. Here we go. All right. So now we have this excerpt from Lakshmi's book in Aquarius and New Exodus. And from this entry on Arcanum 5, he makes a reference to values. So again, it's karma, it's the cause and effect, the result. What goes in is what comes out. If we have negative values, we have a negative result. And he's talking about how we change our values so that they become positive. So referring to the realized man, he says, when his values become divine, positive, his deeds express them by comprehension, love, and righteousness with which he acts. The hierarch wields in his right hand 3 things that distinguish him from all men: the scythe, the symbol of the psychological death; the will, the symbol of the soul; the love, the symbol of the consciousness. So these are the keys, the tools that we use to face and address our karma, to address the situation where we find ourselves and to walk the path. So really, there's no point in having that finger pointed at the sky or at God, or a sense of injustice, or even being mad at people, because everything that we experience, we are related to it in a causal way. And the real way that we address it, instead of looking externally and getting upset by the external circumstances, is to go deep within. And we do that through the work on the psychological death. So killing the ego is very important. I remember the master said many times, all of this will be for nothing if we don't kill the ego, especially if we are doing more advanced practices and getting more, transmuting and having that additional energy. If we don't kill the ego, then it becomes strengthened. So the tools are the same. We want to understand, we want to dissolve the ego, and we want to build the will, or that true individuality, that awakening to become a true human being that is not a victim of unseen forces. Do you want to add anything to that? Okay. All right. So now we come to card number 6. And this card is esoterically called Indecision. We have another quote here from Alchemy and Kabbalah from the end of the chapter. So he summarizes, Arcanum 6 is the lover of the tarot. It is the soul between vice and virtue. It's enchainment, equilibrium, amorous union between man and woman, terrible struggles between love and desire. the mysteries of the Lingam Yoni connection. The struggle between two ternaries is found in the sixth arcanum of the Tarot. The sixth arcanum is the supreme affirmation of the internal Christ and the supreme negation of Satan. Watch and pray. So in the symbol, we see the initiate, or we could say a fallen bodhisattva in some cases, and he's caught in the middle. He's caught in indecision. So when we begin to face our karma, we begin to walk the path, we find ourselves in the position of being fallen. And that's why there is a black inverted triangle at the feet of the initiate, showing that he's fallen. And he has his left hand over his right. So this is an esoteric symbol. And it makes us think of the Egyptian rituals, right? Everything has a symbology, and we say the right hand path is related to walking towards the light. If the arms were crossed like this, I'm actually not sure if you guys can see the video because we have the PowerPoint up. Can you guys see the video if I show you how I cross my hands? Yes, okay, you can see it. So if we cross like this with the right hand over the left, like this, it's a symbol of death where we're dying to the ego, but we're walking the path towards the light because the right, the spirit, is in triumph. But this initiate, because he's fallen, his hands are crossed the other way. So he's sort of like, he's following a path, but it's not the path towards the light. It's the path of the subconscious, the mechanicity. And there's two women on either side. So he's the soul caught in the middle, facing temptation. His head is looking towards the left. So that's also a symbol of going towards the subconscious, towards mechanicity, going towards the darkness. And if you look down the middle, you'll see half of the card is light and half of the card is dark. So the woman in darkness is representing the sleeping consciousness, and that's where he's looking. He's following all of that programming, all of that mechanicity, and he's completely driven by the subconscious. Now, on the other side, we have the woman in the light, and she's the divine mother. She has her arms outstretched. She's beckoning to him to walk the right-handed path, to awaken the consciousness towards the light. But he's not looking that way. So he's caught in the middle, and he needs to decide how he's going to define himself. And then above, we see a hierarch or an angelic being. And he has his bow in the shape of a triangle. The triangle is like the opposite of the black triangle that's facing downward, where the initiate has fallen and he has spirit descending into matter. The consciousness, everything is going down towards the negative, towards the abyss. But the triangle that's formed by the hierarch's bow and arrow is facing upwards. So it's that call to go back up towards the spirit. The woman in the darkness is called Medusa, and it's a symbol of the unconscious. Medusa has the head of snakes, and those snakes can be like the voices of the egos that are telling us to follow that programming and all those negative emotions. But the hierarch has his arrow aimed right at her head. So he's saying to her, or he's saying that we need to kill the ego to dissolve the subconscious. And we see that the initiate, he's right in the middle, so he hasn't necessarily gone either way. He's looking towards the darkness, the subconscious, and his feet are submerged in the waters of life. So he's wrapped up in the horizontal. He's not standing on the same platform as the two women. So that shows that he's mostly in the physical, and he's caught in the middle. And then this also represents the struggle of balance, right? That's why in the chapters in the different books where Samuel Lanvier talks about this card, he talks about the lovers, and he talks about the struggle between brain or the mind and sex, and how the man and woman need to work together to achieve balance and to overcome lust and have the alchemical cooperation. And on a broader scale, it's a symbol of balance, and that balance is the path towards unity.
Yeah. Indecision is probably one of the most frequent arcanum that we will see, being members of a true school of rejuvenation, because we work with the transmutation and we're working with the alchemy. Everything about this card is in alignment, and it was fitting because it's about finding chastity and balance, right? And it's the arcanum that points to how we create the human soul, and even beyond that, eventually how we go back through Da'at too, right? That as above, so below, the balance has to continue. But it's really about the work that we're going to do here in the physical. This card is the Lovers in main tarot. So in a practical sense, this card is usually no, in the sense of, obviously indecision is bad. So if you get it's related to questions about something like business, it means that you're not focused on something, or something is out of alignment, if you're out of balance. However, when it's due to a romantic question, so if you're asking about, say, like finding a future partner or something to do with your relationship, it's usually a positive answer in a practical sense. And this is due to this card being chastity, and also the relationship to Tifereth and the causal plane is directly related to Venus and love. So you'll see actually on this card, is one of the cards where the planetary ruler and the zodiac actually make perfect sense, aligned with the Kabbalah tree. Tifereth is ruled by Venus, and then we have Taurus, of course, which is also ruled by Venus. Everything about Arcanum 6 is in alignment, because that's what it's pointing to. The commandment that goes along with this card is to not fornicate, right? Because if we don't fornicate, we cultivate chastity, and we cultivate Arcanum 6. In a sense, right, we have the status of where we're at right now in the spiritual work. If we're getting this internally, outside of pointing to obviously work in alchemy and not spilling the energy because of not fornicate.
Sarah says, this number has appeared a lot for me at one point in the physical. I feel stuck in the middle, not making any decisions. I don't have enough consciousness to make a choice. Still in that in-between phase.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this card is. This is where we're at, right? So, if we look at the status of what's going on the card, right? We have the tertiary, right? So that's our middle trinity. The Atman Buddhi Manas, the soul, right, is currently descended into the quaternary. It's in the physical reality. It's in the bottom third of the card. Right? And why is it there? Because, well, we're staring at Medusa, and if anybody's familiar with what would happen when you stare at Medusa is that you're petrified in terms of stone. He's asleep, right? Because he's staring into the darkness of Medusa, and has become, I guess, sort of fascinated and petrified. And what we need to do is we need to turn to our Divine Mother, to Venus, Urania, Aphrodite, Urania, in Greece. So I'll say these are Greek names. And we need to turn back to that spiritual path, and we need to do it by killing the ego, which is the angel with the archer at the top, and the wings of the Holy Spirit, which also point to, like, again, raising the fire. The Hebrew letter is Vav, which is the spinal column or phallus. The card is completely, sound like Mr. Samael in the book, completely and totally sexual, because he says it about every single arcanum. And yes, to an extent, every single arcanum is also sexual, but this one specifically, I mean, it literally is. It's chastity, it's love, it's working with the fire to create the solar bodies. It's detaching and the sixth dimension, it's cause and effect, all of that. It's the will of the being, and we hear the will of the being by making a decision to stop, to detach from ourselves. Until we detach from that false sense of self, we don't have the will to move forward. So, yeah, I think I already gave this, but we did Tifereth anyway, so I'm not getting too much more into it. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward there. And I mean, this is like, in a sense, the point of the work, at least for where we're at. I mean, obviously it goes on after, and masters have things to do, but if we cultivate this arcanum and we create the solar bodies, even though that's the beginning of a whole lot more things, like they could say our external gnosis is like a kindergarten to what we really have to do internally. But as for our purpose of why we're in these physical bodies is to figure out this. So
yeah, and not to say, oh, I got 6, it means I'm petrified, it means I'm stuck. Maybe that's what you're feeling because you haven't yet made the decision in the case of where you've gotten the card 6. But 6 can mean a lot of things. It means you need to make a decision. So you're not stuck. Like in a way, when we're in ego, we're all stuck because we all have all these programs and things that we need to detach from and overcome. So if you get the number 6, in one case, it could be saying you need to work in alchemy. In another case, it could be saying you need to make a decision, or you're in the process of learning how to become more defined.
Or don't forget your divine mother.
Yeah, it could be saying a lot of things.
Work with energy, but it's just something that you're going to see a lot. If you're working with the energy, you're going to get this a lot as a reminder to keep sure you're diligently working with the energy. But yeah, also, yes, in other contexts, like if it's related to something you're trying to comprehend, it could be a sign of you haven't comprehended it yet. So to keep trying, to keep observing,
the
like
context,
to self-remember all of that. But, yeah, it is one of the most frequent numbers of Pisces. 6, 3, 8.
Yes, 8. 8 means just keep working. Stop being so impatient. It's going to take a long time. Yeah. So this is another excerpt because when we're in the middle, we can say that we're in the middle of the 2 triangles, one going up and one going down. And the soul that we create in the middle, we're the one who's learning to make the right decisions and to work with the darkness and to transcend it. Because before we came down, we weren't in darkness. So to overcome it was easy because we weren't a part of that. Now that we've become intermingled with the dark, that's where we have the more complex situation that becomes the game that we can play in, and we can learn how to overcome it. So the 3 traders are described here because this is what we overcome when we're in indecision. We have to overcome the ego. We have to overcome that pull towards the darkness in its different aspects. The quote says, "Beloved, remember that indeed, without any doubt, the 2 interlaced triangles of the seal of Solomon, which join or separate love, are the 2 shuttles with which the ineffable mystery of eternal life in the loom of God is woven or unwoven. The upper triangle symbolizes Keter, the Father who's in secret, Chokmah, the Son, and Binah, the Holy Spirit of each human being. The lower triangle represents the 3 traders of Hiram Abiff. Those 3 traders are inside of us. The first trader is the demon of desire. That trader lives within the astral body. The second trader is the demon of the mind. That trader lives within the mental body. The third trader is the demon of evil will. That trader lives within the body of willpower, the causal body. The Bible cites these 3 traders in the Apocalypse of St. John in Revelation 16, 13, 14. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to do the battle of that great day of God Almighty. So this is the big struggle that we have to overcome in order to create the soul. And the key here that he says, when in the beginning of the quote, he says that these triangles either join or separate love. So in a way, that's like a summary of the mystery is, are we going to be in unity or separation? Are we going to be in the illusion that sees things falsely in darkness, or are we going to see in the light? And that's the challenge of indecision, is to detach and overcome the ego, overcome our lust, our rigidity, so that holding on to what I think I know and how I think it is and my position, so I can be right, so I can win the argument. And then finally letting go of that pull to just do all of the things that are the opposite of the light. So the evil will, sometimes the evil will can pretend to be good, like, oh, I'm doing so many good things, like maybe I think if I want to advance, I should do some charity work. I'm going to start a charity and I'm going to be serving soup in the streets, and we can go off on a certain direction.
Everyone will see how good I am when I serve some soup to some homeless people.
Yes.
Look at me.
Yes.
I'm so pious.
Now I'm perfect, and look, I've got some robes for myself, and now I finished the work. When really we're still terribly evil and wicked inside, with our pride and our self-centeredness, our selfishness and our point of view, our always doing things a certain way and thinking that it's the right way. The ego has a million tricks in its bag. So indecision is to be able, well, if we are in indecision and we are working with this, then the goal is to transcend it. And then finally, we have an excerpt from Lakshmi. We see the card is drawn pretty much the same. And the quote here is a summary of how, with number 6, the work is to become defined, to become a true individual, to become a true human being. And he says, why do we have indecision? Indecision is a symbol of insecurity. Indecision is a symbol of weakness. Indecision is a symbol of misunderstanding. It is necessary to seek the wisdom of the being. So the being, the higher aspect, is the one who knows, or we could say the consciousness knows, divinity knows always how to act and how to proceed. But it's the ego that is trapped in false paradigms and bad decisions, which we find out later, and then we create that loop of karma where we keep chasing desire and feeling unhappy and not knowing that we're the one doing it.
I think it's a great quote, just in the sense of it really captures the conciliatory force and what we need to cultivate in understanding to truly have chastity and to create the human soul, which is related to Tifereth and indecision. But in the sense of, I mean, the first thing is a symbol of insecurity. Well, insecurity comes from a false sense of self, and pride, right? We can't be insecure if we are detached from our false sense of self. What makes us feel insecure or inferior, right? And then obviously a symbol of weakness, because we're connecting to our ego rather than our source, and then of course the third one is the just obvious, right? Because then it's a symbol of misunderstanding, which is the opposite of understanding. So it is necessary to seek the wisdom of the being, and the wisdom of the being is that understanding, is a comprehension. So when we're in indecision, we're out of alignment, basically, is what this quote is. And if we're out of alignment, then we're not connecting to, and we're not being chased. And I'm not even talking about necessarily that means we're spilling our energy like physically through sex. We're spilling our energy somewhere by being identified with something. We could be spilling our sexual energy on whatever we're thinking about, or whatever negative emotions we're feeling. Whenever we're attaching to and giving our attention to, rather than being in the moment and in ourself, we're spilling the energy there through indecision. So that means we don't have comprehension. If we comprehended that, if we were aware of it, we were observing that, whatever it is that we were spilling the energy with, we wouldn't be identified with it. And we would have detachment. And detachment would come with having the decision to comprehend and understand and connect with me.
It's a position when you're in indecision that you feel very strongly energetically. It's like those blow up men in the car sales yard, the big red man that has air flowing through him and he goes like this. He blows from side to side. If you're observing while you're in the middle of that kind of situation, then maybe you know that that's the feeling. It's like you are on the threshold of two different realities, and one goes this way and one goes that way. And the ego is what's stopping you from coming into your soul alignment, because your heart knows, your inner Christ knows, that inner higher aspect knows the right way, but the ego or the multiple egos that are trying to pull you off of your course are what's causing that waffling. And you can feel like this terrible inner conflict. And then the test of the mind comes, because then the emotions, that inner imbalance comes. And then you have all these thoughts like, no, it's this, no, it's that. Oh, I don't know what it is. Why am I so confused? And oh, I know, and it's still you don't know. And it's more like strange things that the mind conjures, and then it says, oh, it's hopeless, I'm a failure, I can't. Because it was a trick. It was leading you to that moment where it was going to say, now it's impossible, see, I give up, I'm not for the work, I'm not for the path. And these are all classic things that it says. It's all a plan, how the egos work together to lead us to a place where we give up. But it's a moment, we have to be in this moment because we have to define ourselves. So we have to stand on that threshold, and then we have to make that decision. And this can continue to happen as we keep unturning stones of the areas where we are not defined.
Yeah, and just to look into how this becomes the lover and the lovers, right? You know, exoterically in the regular tarot deck. It's just, if we esoterically understand that this is indecision and thus when we're not defined, and as we become defined and we conquer the commandment and the arcanum to not fornicate, and we cultivate chastity, then we become the lover. Well, not like the lover is like a couple, like you done the street hand in hand or whatever the artwork is, and the rate and why that what is that?
Rider Waite,
Yeah.
yeah.
But in the sense of the lover as in the one that's connected to unconditional love of the ethical triangle. And that's where that idea comes from, what it's pointing to. But obviously that's lost in the translation, in a card that practically, and yes, and to be fair, relatively, this card is a good card for practically for romance. Like if you were asking like something about your relationship and you get this card, and then you're asking for something in that physical reality, it would have that thing. But you lose all the esoterical value with making the card just simply a divination tool to see if you match well with your partner or something. Even though it does work for that.
Yeah. Ideally, you should have more surety than you need to throw the tarot. Like
no, of course, I'm just putting out there that's where it comes from, and that's why this card is portrayed as the lovers in the tarot deck. The regular tarot deck basically just focuses on the practical divination of each card, and that's why they changed it and hid a lot of the esoteric wisdom. But it's not necessarily out of the blue or the vacuum. They did make the changes for reasons, because these cards do read in that way. When you're only looking at the physical reality. Another good example of that, when we'll get to it when we get to Arcanum 10, but Arcanum 10 is about samsara and the wheel. It's the wheel, but in a sense, practically it's a good card, and it is the wheel of fortune. So, usually it's a bad symbol internally, We don't want to see that.
Esoterically, yeah.
Esoterically. But as far as if you were throwing the card about your business, that means a positive recurrence is coming on. And that's where that card got its name. And then we go on and on about all of them and why they were changing what they were. But the thing is that the changes weren't necessarily like just completely out of like ignorance. They just only reflect the practical name, the practical
what the ego wants to use for divination purposes, but it's still correct. Yeah. So that brings us to the end of the lecture, and we do have time for another practice, but we can do questions first and see how we go. Did anyone have any questions or reflections? I know some of you have been getting numbers. So in fact, the numbers that we talked about. Seems like no questions. Oh, wait, I've been seeing one a lot too.
Well, one is it's a good number. It's also a little ambiguous because of its high like cosmic value. Do you have more context on how you've been seeing one?
Or maybe the kinds of questions that you've been sending.
Well, that would be context.
Yeah.
Or even if it were like how it appeared in an experience.
Not really so much a question, but I think I've sent something in the quotes on one. I think I read Arcanum 1 of the Magician. It was just like if I had to use in like 6 what we just like talked about, like making a decision. 1 was like starting to make a decision and like something like that, I guess. I feel like I have to meditate a bit more on that, because actually what we talked about earlier too in the previous like for the book reading, it was you guys talked about like a relationship status and whatnot. I was actually kind of similar, something along those lines. So I feel like it's just something I might need to meditate on. It's been really I guess stuck mostly with something like that kind of decision. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, six towards a relationship question is usually a good answer. I mean, of course, there's a context of your.
It's interpersonal relationships, not right. Like, because you're referring to the meeting before, we were talking about relationships in general, right? Like, you're judging people, or you're not getting along, or are you talking about a romantic relationship?
Yeah, it's like a romantic relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. So usually it's good. I mean, obviously, I don't know the situation or the context. Also, like if were you throwing it, or this is in a dream?
No, I've just seen the numbers appearing a lot, physically, not like in a dream or anything. And it was just, I was just have been asking the question for a long time, like if I was supposed to stay in this relationship or not, because it's been getting really heavy. So that's been a decision I've been trying to make. But I feel like, as you said, Ruth, it's even if I decide to exit it, I don't fully have the comprehension. So it's other people would just come back and still the same drama would still happen. So I feel like that's why I'm not fully exiting immediately. I feel like there's more understanding that needs to happen. And the dream that I had, I remember I posted it, was 17, which was 8. So it's just I'm just kind of trying to tie all of those things together. So not sure.
17 is hope. It does have traits of 8, but 17 is usually a more positive connotation than 8. So 8 is karma and suffering, and you have to be patient. 17 is you have hope and should be patient. So it's not really exactly the same.
Has a different flavor.
Yeah, it's a different flavor. They both are cards of patience, but patience with suffering rather than patience with maybe you should hold out hope for something, which isn't necessarily yes or no, but it's definitely a less negative. I feel like 8 is more of a pain and suffering type of card, and you have to have patience for it. Whereas 17 is like what you're looking for, you're seeking for, you should have hope for it. Just be patient and don't make a rash decision, which could be good or bad depending on what the situation is, right? But it's not really like a negative,
Yeah.
like justice can be, because justice is a hard card. It's like you're paying. Justice 8 is like you are paying karma right now, and you have to deal with it. So
Yeah.
and also it could be like a no if you're trying to start something new while you're having to pay the karma. 17 is not
understand.
that. So mhm.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, when we're in a relationship, and the thing about whether the other person is a gnosis or not, when you start to practice the alchemy, obviously you're activating a lot of forces, but even besides that, when two people come together energetically, in some classes, they refer to it as the meeting of legions, because your ego and their egos, or you could, whatever you want to call it, energies come together. And if the couple is committed to going through the ups and downs, then essentially it's a great training ground. And it's like sometimes it's a soul agreement where the souls are doing that service for one another to help one another to grow and to see themselves, to be that mirror for the other person. So you can many times get this, maybe some people will get a feeling like, oh, I just want to run away, because we don't want to face ourselves. We don't want to face our karma. And of course, if we don't face ourselves, then it can just stay rocky for the whole time because we are not changing. But if we're growing, then it's a beautiful gift to us. And really, what happens in the relationship doesn't matter, because we are growing from it. And that's the point of the relationship, is that the souls grow. If the other person is not growing, as long as we are learning, and if we are doing the work, we should come to a harmonious place. Like, it shouldn't be plates breaking all the time, or whatever, it shouldn't be toxic, even if there are some big moments that have difficult interactions. If just one person is doing the work, it should eventually come to a place where you can have harmony, even if the other person is say having a temper every now and again, because you've come to a place where it doesn't affect you. So even if the other person is really upset, you comprehend, you see them, their pain, and you're not identified with it. So you can empathize and you can have compassion for their situation, but you're not giving energy to it either. You're not necessarily going to say, oh no, why, I'm making them angry and now I have to change. And maybe the thing that they're angry about is not something that you need to change, but it's a pattern for them. You can still be in that space with them and you can grow in it.
Another thing too is if you're getting a number like that, it might not even necessarily point to the arcanum, but the fundamental the number, which in this case is related to the arcanum, because 6, like I said, is very much like causal plane, Tiferet, like cause and effect, chastity, you know what I mean? But in the sense of it could be just a reminder to focus on something. So like if you're getting a lot of, like you're talking like in the physical, or let's say even if it was the dreams, if it's just like 666 everywhere, right? It could be just like, a reminder to, stay focused on the transmutation of the Divine Mother, without even being that deep, since you're not necessarily asking a question and you're just in a situation right now, and it's just reminding you to remember, Arcanum 6. if you're not asking a question, you have, like I say, like a download or an experience that needs to be comprehended. It sometimes doesn't have to be as deep as getting like the full on, like if I have Anubis in a dream, like that's definitely the hierarchy and I want to focus on that. But if I'm just seeing 5 all over the place, it's just like the law, the law, the law, the law, the law. Because I need to think about the law. And it could be like that with 6. So, you know, it could be like chastity, focus on chastity or transmutation or something like that. 6 is also usually sex. It could just be because it's on your mind, to be fair.
Like, or if you're doing lots of alchemy, then you might get symbols that just tell you that you're doing alchemy, but you already know that. But it's just like, well, the consciousness is always speaking to itself everywhere in say a spiritual practice. When you come together as a group, someone might say something and then it's a message for you. And it's in dreams, it's on doorknobs.
But that's why 6 is one of the most common ones. Like I said, 6, 8, 3, and 6 and 3 are basically sex and the sexual energy. 8 is patience, and then 9, because 9 is literally the path. So you start seeing like 9s everywhere, and also work in the 9th sphere also. So it's also to do it like descending and fighting the ego. You see 9s everywhere. Half the time it's like, yeah, I know, I'm walking the path. I mean, I guess it's good to know that you're like still on the path, but it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to, when it's just like just flashing numbers or we're paying closely attention and noticing numbers more, it could be something along those lines. If it's not like in a dream that like with context or, you know, and we didn't throw the cards, there could be little things like that. Like still a message, it's still a message, but it could be a little bit more like generic.
Just a signpost.
Yeah.
But if you're, like you said, I've been feeling indecision, then it's also related to that.
And that could just be your psychology. You're noticing the number 6 everywhere because you're in indecision. Yeah.
Then Jenin has a question.
The angel numbers. Yeah, I mean angel numbers. I try to figure out what's the difference between like 11111 and like 222 or 555. From my understanding is that that's not as much of a numerology thing as it's a thing about being in alignment. So the more we're in alignment, the more synchronicities we get just in everyday life. And that's when I say like sometimes not that deep. Like if it's like, oh, I'm always opening my clock and I'm always seeing it lined up. It's not necessarily that there's like a different message from 555 or 222 or something like that. But if I keep always opening my clock and it almost seems like every hour on the hour, I'm always hitting it when it's like the same digit. It's just that you're doing the right thing. You're in alignment at that time. You know what I mean? And
sometimes it can tell you when you're coming off alignment, like
like if
you
just
keep seeing it missed by one number, then you know, okay, energetically I'm slightly off balance. I need to find where I'm being too much in ego and identify the imbalance, which is also, that's a message to show you. But if you're in alignment, great. You know, it's not a problem. It's normal, and you'll see it so much that it's like part of the furniture.
Yeah, and honestly, that's not even necessarily a thing for people in Gnosis on the path. It's just like if you're in alignment at all. I have a friend that's been in my life for a really long time that karmically is related to me internally, and basically right now he's not on the path because from my understanding he's not supposed to be. Like he's supposed to be doing whatever he's doing at work, and that's what he's supposed to be doing. And he gets angel numbers all the time. He always talks about it. He's like, it's so weird, I see angel numbers. And I know because I know internally he's doing what he's supposed to be doing at this current time. But you know, it just means you're in alignment. Whether if your alignment is to still be asleep and going around the bars, you'll see angel numbers. It doesn't even mean you're necessarily walking the path. But if we are walking the path and we obviously have that spiritual inclination, it's usually good to see that because that means we're in alignment and we're actually conscious of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's either way, it's good to be in alignment. And then you can have more messages on top of that can indicate, like we've mentioned many times, you might have dreams about getting, when you get on the path in the beginning, a lot of people have dreams about shoes, and they might see, you know, a pair of shoes walking down a path. So they can see a literal path, or they can see shoes, and the shoes are moving forward. And then later on, you might have dreams about getting on or off a train. Sometimes you come to a platform and you get off one train and you get on another train. And then sometimes you might have dreams about catching a flight and either catching it or missing it. And those are octaves where you have the opportunity to go to a new level of being, but maybe if you miss the flight, then there was something you didn't see, something you didn't comprehend. And then it might come round again. If you have lots of dreams of missing flights, then it means it kept coming and you kept missing it, and you have to try to comprehend more in depth to see what is this pattern that keeps coming around. But a lot of those transportation signs are about the path, and then the numbers are just energetic alignment with the construct. But yes, it would be worse if you were trying to be on the path and you were finding that you were way out of alignment. Yeah, I think we may not have time for much of a practice at this stage. Any final questions before we let you guys go?
I wanted to ask Ruth if you wouldn't mind sharing that beautiful prayer that you did during our meditation.
Yes, I can share it. I'll share it.
That would be beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Wonderful. And then I wanted to mention that it was in the misalignment of everything that we received during that indecision process. It's such a beautiful opportunity to observe why we are confused and to really focus on what is petrifying us within our egos. And it's just like all of the rerouting opportunities that we have to bring those moments into our own personal awareness and just keep going with the work. And so that was what I gathered from that. I wanted to share.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's a beautiful reflection.
Yeah, thank you. If anyone has become a rock in any part, it can be dissolved. That's the good news. Yes, you can keep reflecting and working with it.
Yeah, it's not about if we fall, because every one of us will have times we get tested, and that's part of what we're doing is that we're gonna make mistakes. But it's about, do you just get back up and keep going, or do you let that fall take you off the path? And that it's a big difference. So
that reminds me of a funny saying they have in Chinese where they say when someone falls over, they pick up a handful of sand, and it's kind of like the person that says, I meant to trip, when they were going down the stairs. But it's even every fall is meant to give us a lesson. So rather than staying on the ground, we have to carry on.
Yeah, there's a lot of instructors that say, like certain things you have to avoid. If you do this, they'll just take you off the path, and they put a lot of fear, and it's not necessarily accurate. Like, I mean, there's certain things that, actually from personal experience, right? That apparently, if you go this way or that way, or do these certain things in your life, like you're just done, right? Well, and then I'm here today, so, and that's all stuff that I did before Gnosis. I wouldn't even have Gnosis, but allegedly, if you ever did that in your life, things, not even to get into personal detail, but that things that are supposed to just automatically, like destroy your psychology to the point of no return. And the truth is we could be wherever we are, get to a certain level of awakening, and the ego could take that. And then all the being has to do is, if they want to, give you another conscious shock. If we get lost, if we're meant to find our way back, we'll find our way back to the path. And we always keep faith in that there is something more. I don't even say anything, because before I was Gnosis, I didn't even know about the being. But you know what I mean? You always just know that it's not just hopeless. And you have that type of disposition in you, and that inquietude that just doesn't go away. And something will happen in the construct to bring, if you really have within your heart that you want to improve and get better, something will happen that will show you the way. If we're still moving in a direction and showing that we have a desire to grow, we'll be given something will happen, or something that will shock us out of whatever ego it is. But if we just completely give up and want to go back to being asleep and go back to the, well, then that takes you off the path, and then you're gone. So
Yeah, as long as we don't give up and we stay humble and open, we can stay on the path. And really, it's eternal growth, right? It's not like it ever finishes. We're the consciousness that is awakening on a journey of awakening. You know, we're just expanding and uncovering more and more mysteries. So it's not going to end, but we can just continually expand as long as, you know, the people that perpetuate that fear, it's just another paradigm, and it's a subscription of theirs, and we don't need to accuse them or argue with them and say, oh, but you know, you that's not true. Just let them be and be respectful, but we know that there's always more that we don't know. So it continues.
Yeah, and it's also hard to know if somebody's not doing what their being wants them to do, unless we're like a master, can go into the astral and go talk to their being. Like, how do you know why that person's so unconscious, or why that person's so dogmatic and religious? You know, that could be their mission. So, you know, who are we to judge what they're doing? Just understand that they're at the level that they're at. Maybe it's because they're not listening to their being. Maybe it's because they're not supposed to, you know, and you know, and even if they were messing up, that means they need to learn a lesson. It's not for us to just judge them. They'll learn it when they're supposed to. So that's the biggest thing, you know. We focus on our own work, and we help those who want to be helped, and then, you know, we love everyone else the same.
Yeah, and we stay encouraged.
Yeah.
Stay encouraged and trust in the being.
Love everyone and tell the truth. Right?
Yes. Okay, take care, everyone.
Love and
Sending
light.
lots of love and light. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Jenin.